Hey, today we are here with Emily Williamson, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience as a music educator. So go ahead, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily, as Abigail said, and I am in Texas. I live outside of the Austin area, and I have been teaching for 8 years, and in various schools. I actually started my music career in the Dallas area, in Richardson, outside of Dallas, and I taught middle school choir for 3 years before I moved to an elementary school. My husband is also a music educator. He teaches band, middle school band, and so so he and I moved to the Austin area about 4 years ago. Because he got a position in the Leander ISD. And so my family lives in Austin, and it just kind of worked out for us to move there. And I've been teaching in elementary schools since we've moved there. I've taught actually in Round Rock, and I actually just moved, and I'm moving this year to a new school district outside of Austin, Liberty Hill, which is where we live. So it's going to be much closer for me.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and with the Austin area right now, it's just booming. So it's been harder. So, but yeah, I will be moving there
for you, and that should save you some time driving.
Oh yes. Well, and I mean, that's part of teacher life, is that like you value every minute that you don't have. And as commuting and I was at an amazing school, but an hour out of your day every day adds up over time. And the Austin area really does have a lot of really amazing districts. So I'm very blessed that I could move to a different district that I knew would still be supportive. And that's kind of where I fall into the line of, making sure that as a music educator, I mean, I'm still a young teacher, even though I have taught multiple levels and I've taught, 8 years. I'm still a young teacher, and my goal and my husband's goal is that we are career educators. And that is very hard because we have a lot of friends in the education that have left education recently, obviously due to COVID and due to just, burnout in general, the lack of pay, all the things. So really, my husband and I together have balanced and made a real big point to create a balance of work and home life. It's not always possible because as music educators, I mean, part of what we do is outside of the school day. But 2 ways that I do this directly for myself is that I long range plan for the entire year at the beginning of the year. So I'm able to do that and kind of keep myself on a week by week track of like, where are my kids supposed to be? And I mean, you have a goal, but like, obviously things happen. And, we had a huge snowstorm a couple years ago that we were like locked in our houses for a week, which just doesn't happen in Texas. And so, so we obviously lost time there. And I mean, of course, when COVID hit, that was a complete change of pace. But I try to keep that long range plan in mind. And I look at it periodically every month and just see like, have I gotten to these concepts? Do I need to reteach them? I am Kodai certified. And so I do follow the Kodai method, which has been tremendous for my teaching. Like, obviously, that is a very structured and sequential way of teaching, which works for me. I am very much that way, where I need a goal and I need to see it enacted. I think that's kind of where, my choir emphasis comes in too, because it is so oral skill and vocal, which is not always comfortable for people who are instrumentalists, but I love that method because it keeps me on track. So that's one way that I keep myself from like creative burnout, is just making sure that I check my long range plans and keep myself on some sort of schedule. and then at the end of the year, I revisit like, okay, we did not get to this rhythmic concept, and that's fine. Like, you just have to realize that you can start it over at the beginning of the next year.
Exactly.
So that's one of the ways I help myself in the classroom. And then outside of the classroom, I give myself like a deadline at the end of the day. I will not stay past X time. And mostly that's, like I said, because I've been commuting for the past 3 years. But another reason is that I find that my classroom space is a consistent workspace. And if I'm there, I can work and I can be productive. But when I'm still there, I'm still on. And you know, you just need, your body and your mind needs a break. And so I give myself a time cutoff of, I will not stay past this time every day. Of course, if I have a performance or something on campus, of course I stay longer. But on a general day, you know, it's, I will not leave past this, or I will not stay past this point. And my husband's kind of the same way. His is a lot harder because he has sectionals before and after school, but at the same time, he does do a really good job of balancing that. And we did not do that our first few years of teaching. So that obviously created a very big sense of exhaustion and burnout. Now with COVID, obviously we had to work significantly harder because we had to adapt everything that we were doing for a virtual component. And, you know, having kids come back to us from being virtual has been quite a change. You know, I have long range plans, but as I've gotten students back in person from being virtual, my district did it very differently. It was just like, oh no, I can't even, my long range plan doesn't even apply to this grade because they are having a hard time just emotionally connecting to me. And I think the biggest thing for me with those situations and with the kids in general when they've come back is to just make sure that they realize that my classroom and my content area is a place where they can feel really confident and they can feel really comfortable. You know, we talk so much in education about social emotional health for the kids, and that's so true. But at the same time, I think that music obviously is always socially emotionally connected, and so naturally our content does allow for me to create relationships with the kids in a different way. So one of the things I did a lot in the past couple of years as kids have come back is that I have I've changed basically how I handle their behavior. Not so much in a disciplinarian way, but more than anything, I have really worked on how they are feeling at the time. And that starts with something super simple, like, how are you feeling today when you come in? And they just like tap the little chart, which a lot of teachers do, but I just didn't do that before simply because I thought, you know, I only have 50 minutes. Like I need to get, I need to get them in the classroom. But it's really helped me understand them and where they're coming from, because a lot of kids that you would think on the surface look like they're fine, internally aren't feeling okay. And a lot of it was fear out of, I'm coming back in person, I've been at home, my parents have made me feel like being around other people is not safe. And then also, you know, some of them really struggle with academics because they're behind. And so they've come from a class setting that they may have just had a really hard lesson that they didn't understand. And emotionally, they're not in a place where they can feel ready for me to teach them a 16-note pattern.
You're like,
so,
let's go.
I know. I'm like, sorry. So I definitely tried to connect with their emotional, like, state at the time.
Yeah.
And then that helps me see how I can regulate that. And oftentimes, I mean, I feel like this for myself too. I really try to start my lessons every week with something that was really fun, and something that was really connecting to us as a class. You know, even something silly as like a silly warm up, or even starting with a game, which I like never do, but just to have the kids feel like my space is someplace that they can feel really comfortable, and that this is going to be a safe space for them. And then before that, you know, I didn't worry as much about that, just because of, you know, I wanted to teach the content.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a huge change, but I think it's also helped me realize my own self. You know, my emotions obviously change all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, there have been days in the past couple of years where I have been really frustrated and I have a class of beautiful first graders walking in the door, and they are, you know, first graders are all about justice. And so instantly one of them comes up and tells me a tattle on someone else, and I'm like, I don't have time for that.
No, not today.
Yeah. So I think that that's how I've definitely helped both my own personal burnout and also helping their burnout, because I think in some ways they're really burnt out too. And you know, our classes are so good for play. And I think that can be misunderstood because, you know, obviously there's a ton of research about the use of play and learning, but our content is so invaluable for that because it teaches children how to connect to other people, how to play fairly, how to have turns, how to, you know, recognize that you can fail and try again. And so that's something that the kids coming back have definitely had a harder time with. And so I've really tried to focus on that, like that piece of childhood that they can play and enjoy, using music as the avenue. And I think that that's really changed my classroom culture in general. So it's been interesting. I will say that there were times where talking to a screen and having no response for a group of kindergartners is really, it's not fun. Because part of the joy of kindergarten music class is like hearing their funny comments and everything. So anyway, that's kind of where I've been the past few years in my own personal career. Now I'm moving schools this year, and the school I'm moving to is twice the size of where I have been.
Wow.
So it will definitely be a big shift. I will have a longer time in between classes.
That's nice.
Just because of the sheer number.
Yeah. So how many do you think you'll have in a class then?
So the class sizes will remain pretty average. I don't believe most of the classes have any more than 20. Most of them average between 15 and 20. And so that's really good. Texas is really good about structuring schools that way. At least the districts I've been in and the districts I know my friends are in, they really do value, you know, not overwhelming teachers in that way. So, I mean, I can't say that for everywhere, but at least the districts I have been a part of have been very consistent about that. But I will have, you know, much longer time between when I see those classes. So my rotation will be longer. So that means my long range planning is definitely going to look different this year.
Yes.
And it's a young school, and the teachers that have been there before were, this is the third year the school will be open, and both of the teachers before have been first year teachers.
Wow.
So, which is fine, but I just know that means the kids that have been there have not had a consistent
No,
structure.
so it'll be different.
So a lot of it will be starting from the beginning, I feel. So I'm using obviously a lot of the Kodai sequence.
Yes.
But I'm treating it as if, you know, the older students especially are kind of like beginners.
Yeah.
Which is great.
To go in like that instead of just being like, oh, they should be at this level, I should have no issues, you know, treating it like, okay, they're beginners, I'm having them for the first year, you know. Treating it like that. I think that'll be helpful.
Well, and I think my choir background too, you know, when we had sixth graders in middle school, some of them had come from schools where the music program was just not great, and that's okay, but we had to really cram in a lot for them, you know, in a short amount of time. So it's doable. It's not easy, but I think, you know, it's a situation that will be it will be interesting to see. I feel like I'm going to be doing my own like research project on this.
Yeah, for a little bit. Yeah, getting used to your new situation, definitely.
Yes.
I'm excited for you though. That I think it'll be a good change probably.
Yeah, and I think that's helped. I will say, you know, part of my own personal burnout was having a situation at my previous campus where, you know, I don't think that there was any situation that was perfect during COVID. And every district and every school handled it very differently. And I think that there was a little bit of almost like trauma feeling. And I think I needed a new start to see, you know, just to have a little bit more of my personal joy back, because I think it felt like I was just trying to still clean up the mess from COVID. So
that'll be a good fresh start then. So I'm really happy for you. Do you have any advice for new music educators?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I wish that someone would have told me is that you will not be in your perfect situation ever. You will never have a perfect situation. There will always be something that isn't ideal or isn't, you know, just absolutely what you wish for. The hardest thing as a music educator, I think, is not the teaching. It's not the classroom management. It's not even the kids or the parents. I think the hardest thing as a music educator is advocating for yourself. And so I would say, you know, if you are in a situation that you go into a campus and things are not the way that you know it should be, don't settle for it. Speak up, ask for your, you know, administrators to think on it. A lot of times principals don't have a clue, and it's not their fault because they've never taught a fine art before. And that's okay. You are the teacher to them of that, more often than not. And I've had many principals, and almost all of them have said, you're the expert, you tell me. So you know, like I said, with my situation now, it's not going to be perfect. But I thankfully have really good administrative support that is willing to help make it that way. And it's going to take some growing pains, but that's, I think, the hardest thing is I'm such a perfectionist. And so walking into some situations where I'm like, this is not right. You can't fix it all in a day. So sometimes you have to grin and bear it, and that's just how it goes. But I feel like as a whole, education really truly does desire to do what's best for both teachers and kids. And if you're in a situation where it's just not possible, or it just doesn't seem like you're being supported, then don't stay there. And that's hard because consistency is so good, and obviously it's very helpful. But I when we first moved to the Austin area, I was at a campus for 1 year, and it was very, very toxic. And it was just the leadership mostly. And so I then just knew that that was not the place for me. And that's okay. Like, that totally is a part of my personal teaching experience. And I learned a lot through that. And then also know that every lesson is not going to go exactly as you plan. So just be prepared for the technology to fail, or I mean, a kid might throw up. Like, that's just part of yes. So
Well, and then my last question is, what is one of your favorite memories or experiences as a music educator?
So this is back when I taught choir. I was at a middle school in Richardson for 3 years. And the first year I got there, I was an assistant director the whole time. And I taught this group of beginning 6th graders. And as they grew up through that 3 years I was there, we, I don't know if you know anything about the Texas Music Association, but every state has like a music educators association, and Texas Music Educators Association has a big convention every year in San Antonio. And of course they invite, ensembles just like every other one. And so the group of girls that I started my first year got invited in my last year there to sing there. And so so we took them and they got to perform. And it was so sweet because they were a really, really, really beautiful group of girls. But of course, since that was like my first group that I began,
oh, my kids.
Like they saw me get engaged to my husband and get married and all that. So it was like a very sweet connection that I had to that. And of course, as a music educator, like, your goal is to be able to have your performances heard. And so it just felt like a really satisfying thing to work so hard and get to that position. So that was one of my coolest memories for but I will say too, like, for any teacher, you kind of have to enjoy the small memories, like, because it's hard every day, and the kids are they're funny. So
they are funny. That's one thing. That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today and all of your advice and hearing about your experiences. And I hope you have a good vacation.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry if you heard any other noise in the back.
I heard nothing. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.